I'm Logan. I'm back with another box opening, some more Azorius stuff. This is the Azorius Guild Kit. It's kind of a pre-made deck. It's not for any particular competitive format, but it's really to give you an idea of how Azorius goes. So I'm going to start working on this box while I'm talking. It tells me to open here, but you know, I'm terrible at following directions. Azorius is the Azorius Senate. They are a guild that focuses on control. They're a bunch that like people to follow their rules if no one else's. So, you know, nice box. Tells you what's in there, but we're going to find out the old-fashioned way. It tells you here, look, Azorius Senate standards of behavior for all Azorius representatives, and they try and tell everyone else how to behave too. Ooh, there's a lot of words. I'm not going to read it all, but okay, so the important bit, the Azorius bits, it's all down here. Like, this is the stuff that you're supposed to read from the Azorius and no one does. It's Lavinia. She's so nice. She's not that nice. She's really good in Vintage, the new Lavinia. You know, if people are looking at standard cards to get them into older formats. A sick deck box for the Azorius Guild, and what is this? Oh my god, I'm gonna put it on my car when I leave here. And my favorite thing is the spin downs. I actually really like these guild spin downs. They're awesome. All the guild symbols are amazing. I like the watermarks, and I like the ability to put the guild symbols on everything. And it even works as a triangle. The best spin down. This is the face. This is Asperia, the Supreme Judge. This was the guild leader of the Azorius before this most recent set. If anyone's familiar with the card Assassin's Trophy, it depicts poor Asperia going away for a very long time. The trophy is her head. Oh, very sad. But with this one, she is a, let's say, 6 mana, 6/4 flyer. When a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, you can draw a card. Clearly a very defensive, controlling card. And a big body on a flyer. Let's see what else we got. See, so what we get off of Azorius out of this one is it plays for a later game, it likes to draw cards, it has flying, and a big old body. Alright, also pretty judgmental. Let's see, Pride of the Clouds, let's see if it goes with it. So 1/1 flyer, and +1/+1 for each other creature with flying on the battlefield. Okay, so flying, clearly an important theme for Azorius. Oh, I love these set symbols for all of them. It always has the Azorius symbols. Let's see. Oh man, so some of them, the standard legal ones seem to have the standard set symbol on them. That's kind of awesome. Let's see if it works for commons too. Yeah, uncommons. Oh, that's awesome. This you can forecast. Forecast is one of the Azorius mechanics. It's from the original Ravnica set. Let's see, which one? City of Guilds, maybe? It's from the original Ravnica block. At the beginning of your, let's see, forecast, you pay the forecast cost, which is 2 blue and white, and you reveal the card in your hand. You still had all these. You can do it in your upkeep, I think. You can reveal it from your hand, create a 1/1 white and blue bird creature, take 1 flying, which is pretty awesome. I kind of like that. Because so you make the 1/1s is clearly the trick, and then you play this guy for only 2 mana after investing and making, like, tapping 4 every turn to make a 1/1, and you got a giant flyer. That's pretty awesome. This card I love. It's from the most recent set. So it's always weird to get these effects, like leyline effects, pre-game effects, things you sit down, you keep your hand. Like, yeah, this is a good hand. And also, before we start, let's do something. Like, put a Leyline of the Void on the battlefield and make sure your dredge opponent can never win the game. This one, it's a little less extreme, but it also gives you a real effect once you cast it later on. At the beginning of, you can reveal it from your opening hand. You can use Scry 3 at the beginning of your first upkeep. So you get to keep, you know, some sketchers. I like keeping sketchy hands, and this leads to some great stories. Like, yeah, I kept a 0-land hand and got there, easy game, easy life. I like cards like that. Lavinia the 10th. This is Lavinia. Here she is. I found her. She has protection from red. Alright, that's a bold stance. When she enters the battlefield, Detain. Detain is another ability. It's from Return to Ravnica. That's from the second Ravnica set. It says, detain each non-land permanent your opponent's control with converted mana cost 4 or less. Excuse me. And it also explains exactly what detain is, so thank you for that one. Oh yeah, this is once during your upkeep and only during your upkeep and once each turn. It tells you for forecast. This one is, until your next turn, this permanents can't attack or block and their activated abilities can't be activated. So it kind of turns them off. It puts them in jail for just a little while. Lavinia puts lots of people in jail, unless, you know, they're more powerful than she is. Costs as much or more. Let's see, Windreaver. It looks like a Morphling. It has all the weird Morphling abilities. It is a 5 mana, 1/3 flyer. Weird vanilla test card. Let's see. So white, you can pay a white and give it Vigilance. Sure. That's still not quite on right. You can pay a white to give it +0/+1 until end of turn. What a weird ability, especially with Vigilance. You want to get there. Oh, there's the trick. You pay a blue and switch its power and toughness until end of turn, and another blue to return it to its hand. So you can save it, and you can also pump a ton of mana and deal lots of damage with this guy. I have not seen this card before in my life, and I love it. Asperia. This is Asperia in the early days. This was in her first showing in the first Ravnica block, when Asperia the Inscrutable deals combat damage to a player. So it's all about dealing damage to players. Look there. You can choose a card name and reveal their hand. You search if the chosen name is revealed. You search your library for a creature card with flying, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So this also leads to some sweet games, because you get the lucky guess. Cabal Therapy is a sweet card, because you cast it and you might hit something, and you might flash it back, and you will almost definitely hit something the second time. It's because the first time you always name Brainstorm, so they never put the card back. But the best stories come from the blind names at the beginning. When you cast Cabal Therapy, you name Tarmogoyf, and your opponent happens to have 3 Tarmogoyfs in their hand. So you get the sweet blind names on this one. That's the fun games. Archon of the Triumvirate, which they just released with as miniatures with Dungeons and Dragons, along with the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica that they released. They put a bunch of minis out there. I opened this in one of their little booster boxes. It is a really cool mini. When it enters the battlefield, it detains 2 non-land permanents. So this guy enters and detains 2 guys. It is a 4/5 flyer. So flying also clearly showing up a bunch here. So there's some detaining happening, some flying happening. That's what we're learning right here. Ooh, Unbreakable formation. So this card's getting a lot of love right now in Standard. I heard last night, don't tell anyone, but people are replacing the very expensive Mythic card, History of Benalia, with the card Unbreakable Formation and a bunch of 1-drops. It's just better in the decks with all 1-drops. Sometimes you don't even hit your 3rd land on turn 3 because you start cutting lands from your deck and using Legion's Landing to flip and act as a land. And this is just 3 mana. It's an Anthem, so it puts a +1/+1 counter, makes all your guys 1 bigger. That's Anthem effects, is what they get called. And it also can be used as a combat trick to protect from wraths. Like people cast Kai's Wrath on turn 4, and you left up your 3 mana, and give your creatures indestructible. But the real power is casting on turn 3, and instead of attacking for 4, attacking for 10. I died to lethal on turn 4 to this yesterday. Decision Sphere. Also awesome. I was talking to someone about their sideboard in Jeskai just today, and I had 2 of these running around on their 75. It's powerful, it hits everything, almost everything. It doesn't hit other Detention Spheres, but it exiles all things with the same name, so it's like Maelstrom Pulse. You can exile a bunch of 1/1 Goblin creature tokens against Storm. I do that all the time. You can, of course, get all your opponent's Glyphs. I've done that a few times too. It's a powerful all-around 3-mana answer to things. It shows up a good bit in Modern. Render Silent. It is not quite Absorb in this Standard, but it is sweet. Counter target spell, and it gives you always something a little extra. This is Counterspell and Silence stapled to each other. So after this resolves, they don't cast any more spells that turn. So they maybe cast their little test spell that they want you to counter, and you do counter it, but then they don't get to cast the real spell either. So it's a pretty cool utility spell. Dovescape. Dovescape also shows up in some weird Modern decks, like Enduring Ideal. It has Epic. It is a very expensive sorcery, and when you cast this Epic spell, you don't cast any other spells, but you get to search your library. You don't draw any other spells, I guess. You just search your library for a card and cast it. The Enduring Ideal gets enchantments, and so you get this weird enchantment after you get a couple other lock pieces, like Form of the Dragon. And it says, whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, counter that spell, and then they get birds. It turns their spell into birds. Instead of your, I don't know, like Maelstrom Pulse on my thing that stops your creatures from attacking unless you pay 8 mana, you instead get a bunch of birds. Good luck attacking with them without paying 8 mana for each of them. It is a fun and a little bit stupid card, but I like to say, like, no, here you have birds. Sphinx's Revelation, a card near and dear to my heart. I won lots and lots in Standard. My first Standard format was actually RTR Standard, and I very much enjoyed casting this card, casting Elixir of Immortality, to shuffle more of these cards back into my deck, and then draw them, and draw the rest of the cards in my deck over and over and over. It was very fun. It was very fun. Sometimes you would ultimate a Jace Architect of Thought. Sometimes you would just draw all your cards over and over and end the game at 300 life and your opponent would deck themselves naturally. That was beautiful times. It's kind of back with Teferi. Some people don't find them quite so beautiful. Warrant Warden is a card that I think needs a little bit more time in Standard. I think it's a very powerful card. It has, speaking of RTR Standard, this deck also had Azorius Charm, which I don't know if it's in it. Oh, it's the birds from Duff's Game. Oh, you get birds. Is the Azorius Charm from this Standard. The mode that you used most often was probably the cycle mode on Azorius Charm. Just you cast the spell to draw a card. Cycling is a mechanic. It just lets you discard a card to draw a card, which is functionally identical to Azorius Charms. Pay the blue and white mana, the 2 mana to cycle it, put it in your graveyard, and draw a card. Another mode of that Azorius Charm was put an attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library, which is the mode on Warrant. This Warden is another, it's kind of a modal spell with one of the modes of Azorius Charm, and the other mode would be make a 4/4, make a Sarah Angel, 4/4 flying vigilant creature. This time it's a Sphinx. Let's see if there's a Sphinx in here. There is a Sphinx in here. Makes this 4/4 flying vigilant Sphinx. I bet I can guess what else is in here. I think there might be some deposing and deploying happening. I think this card is very powerful in Standard, and it deserves more of a chance. It'll show up. You wait. Judge's Familiar. This was also back in the RTR Standard. He showed up. So we just missed the Super Bowl in real time, where I am now. People called this the Super Bowl. It is a superb owl. People played it in mono white. People played it in mono blue. And he was one of the more annoying cards for a deck like mine that liked to tap out for their X balls, but couldn't anymore. They had to always leave a mana open. He cost me a lot of cards, a lot of life. Also very cheap threat. And you can play them in mono blue or mono white decks. Let's see. Azorius Guild Mage. Also, we're seeing more emphasis on the flyers again and some controlling elements here. Azorius Guild Mage. So, they changed the Guild Mages around. All the Guild Mages in each of the blocks have their own kind of abilities. These in Azorius Guild Mage, they are hybrid, so you can cast them in mono white decks or mono blue decks or blue white decks. They're just harder to cast in mono white or mono blue, or rather in decks with only white or only blue mana. You can put this in a blue green deck. But in a blue green deck, you would not be able to activate the 2 and a white ability of tap target creature. You could still play the counter target activated ability, the Stifle, for the 2 and a blue activation for Azorius Guild Mage. It is sweet that Azorius Guild Mage versus Azorius Guild Mage requires a bunch of blue mana to get tapped to start countering activated abilities or tapping creatures. In the RTR version, it was, say, blue and white, and it had abilities that work much the same way, and they kept the strict two-color in Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance so far. They require, say, blue and white, but now the activated abilities all require them to tap, so you can only activate once per turn. In the other ones, there weren't tap abilities on the other guild mages, so you could keep going off with them with all your mana. So they've kind of moved it around in power level. Azorius Herald, this is the OG. Azorius Herald. Okay, this is a mechanic in the original Ravnica block. It turned your creatures into spells, but it effectively turned them into spells. So when this entered this battlefield, you gain 4 life, and it can't be blocked. That only matters if you don't sacrifice it, because if you don't spend blue mana to cast this spell, you sacrifice it. It also shows up with Mr. Court Hussar, which I've played in Modern. With Sun Titan. It's sweet. So this turns into just 2 and a white, 3 mana, gain 4 life, if you don't have blue mana in your deck. But if you get to pump blue mana into this guy, he turns into a 2/1 unblockable, who also gains you 4 life when he enters the battlefield, so great in races. This guy is Impulse, I guess Anticipate. 3 mana Anticipate, though that card hadn't existed when this card came out. You get to look at the top 3 cards, put one of them in your hand, the rest on the bottom. And if you spent white mana on it, you get to keep around the body, the 1/3 Vigilance 2 for 3 mana, if you paid 1 white blue, say. So, sweet mechanic. It's kind of odd, but it lets you cast your creatures as spells while keeping up your creature count, and give you another way to, play cards in multiple archetypes without being a 2-color, exactly these 2 colors. Like, you don't have to be blue-white to play Court Hussar, but it gets a lot better if you are. Same with Azorius Guild Mage. Let's see, Stoic Ephemera. It's a 3 mana 5/5 defender flying, and when it blocks, sacrifice it. So this guy is hella stats for 2 and white, but a very controlling card. It's more like a removal spell. You get to block a creature that's attacking and then trade with it or eat it, but this guy's going to trade either way. because it deals 5 damage to the attacker. This is the less effective at killing creatures, but more effective at being a butt and standing in the way. It's just a 0/6 defender flying. Guy blocks about everything. This is my first casual deck, Liev Sky Knight. I love this card. This is a great tempo card. He showed up in Esper Humans back in the RTR standard. People played Zathrid Necromancer, who showed up in Modern Humans as well. This guy, 3/1 flying, so a 3-power, 3-drop flyer, which itself is pretty good. A good tempo play, powerful attacker if they don't interact with it. Very easy to kill, but if they don't interact with it, very good on it as an attacker. And it can detains it. It detains a non-permanent when it enters the battlefield. So it also takes out another attacker or blocker for another turn. It's great. Love that card. Near and dear to my heart, my first decks. So let's see, Spirit of the Spires, more flying synergies. Other flying creatures you control get +0/+1. And it does look like all the cards that are in Standard retain the set symbol that they came from. Azorius Justiciar. See, when it enters the battlefield, yeah, it just double detains. Yep, detains 2 creatures. So this card isn't so much about the body. It's 4 mana 2/2, not quite worth it. But you get to detain 2 target creatures. It's just creatures on this one, not non-permanents like that one. But you take 2 creatures out until the end of your opponent's next turn. So for your attacks and for your opponent's attacks on your next turn. Skymark Rock, so when it attacks, you can return a creature defending player controls with toughness 2 or less to its opponent's hand. So between the detain, you actually get some kind of tempo synergies. The idea of tempo is kind of complicated, but it's more about getting ahead of your opponent, using your mana more efficiently than your opponent does. And stuff like detain gets things out of the way for a turn, but stuff like this, bouncing creatures while only attacking with yours, it lets you get ahead by attacking, make your opponent have fewer blocks by bouncing their creatures when they're attacking, and you have to worry less about being attacked back. Same with detain. So it does look like there's the beginnings of some tempo decks, and low drops like Judge's Familiar definitely let you get ahead there. Excuse me. Sphinx of Nuprov. This is such a better way to template the Frost Titan ability than the feel bad of counter spells that target him, unless you pay an additional mana there's a trigger, and you can miss triggers. It's a much better way to template this. They've been doing it since around Theros, I guess. Spells that your opponent's cast that target him cost 2 more to cast. So if they want to lightning strike this guy, it actually costs 4 mana. So again, you get ahead or at least even on mana when they try and answer this guy. And it's a 4-power flying vigilance creature for 4 mana. Difficult to cast. I kind of like the mana cost restrictions they've been doing in Standard recently. The Goblin Chain Whirler is a very powerful 3-drop, but it requires you to play a deck that has almost or only one source that is not a mountain. Same with something like Kaya's Wrath. It's a very powerful spell, but if you want to put it in a deck with Absorb, you have to play all your dual lands and then like 3 more basic lands, and and if you draw your swamp, you're not going to cast your Absorb on time, and if you draw an island, you're not going to cast your Kaya's Wrath on time. So, if you have to play it. So, it's awesome, and I like that way of balancing cards as much as total converted mana cost, which is just adding up all the pips and the numbers like 3, 4, 1. Windstorm Drake, the best friend of, let's see where he is, Spirit of the Spires. The other half, this gives +0/+1, this gives +1/+0. So this is better on defense, also better defensive body at a 2/4. And this is a 3/3 flyer for 1 more mana, which is also a fine rate, and also giving everything else +2, +1/+0. Imagine attacking with this guy, or via most amazing, having Dovescape, and not like a weird lock like they do in Modern with Enduring Ideal, but having like this guy out. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. You get to attack their doves with your doves. Oh man. You need more of these though, because the games with Dovescape, you get lots of birds. You can use dice, I guess, but it's more fun. You just gotta buy like 3 of these, and then show up with all the burbs, and hand them out to your opponents as I did. Sky Hussar. I've seen this card in Legacy. It's a weird one. It was a draw engine that required... Okay, so when it enters the battlefield, you untap all creatures you control. It's a 4/3 flyer for 5 mana. It's a fine rate, and it kind of gives your creatures pseudo-vigilance post-combat. And also, it has Forecast. Tap 2 untapped white and or blue creatures you control. Reveal Sky Hussar from your hand. Draw a card. So you start casting cards like Judge's Familiar was in this deck, and other 1-drops, blue spells, as well as Blister Coil Weird, which was in Return to Ravnica. It was an Izzet card, but it costs blue-red hybrid mana, so you can put it in your mono blue deck in Legacy. You get to tap all these garbage blue 1-drops mainly, and draw a bunch of extra cards, and then cast a bunch of cards, and then Flusterstorm a bunch of your spells. And Flusterstorm, it is counter-target non-creature instant or sorcery spell. I have tried to Flusterstorm Sulfuric Vortex. It does not work. Instant or sorcery spell, unless its controller pays 1, but it has Storm, so you make a bunch of copies. So you cast a bunch of useless spells, then you Flusterstorm your own thing. And Blister Coil Weird lets you eat spells off the stack to put 2+1/+1 counters on it for each spell. So you make a bunch of Flusterstorm copies, and then you eat a bunch of Flusterstorm copies, and when you've cast like 6 spells and a bunch of dazes that happen, and then you cast Flusterstorm, you eat all the copies, you just attack them for 20. It's great. 21, I guess. It's a 1/2. But it's sweet. It's a sweet, sweet deck, and this is the card drawing engine for it. 0 mana, you just tap a bunch of creatures. Unlike the other forecast card we saw, you don't have to pay any mana. So, the lands in this deck. So you got Azorius Guild Gates, you know, enters tapped, but it's sweet. You also have Azorius Chancery, which are awesome. These are Karoo lands. They get their names from the original cycle in some set, I don't remember, from a long time ago. The one that taps for, when it enters the battlefield, enters tapped, and when it bounces a land when it enters the battlefield, and the Karoo tap for 1 and a white. In the original Ravnica set, they added these that tap for a guild color, like blue-white, instead of just 1 and a white or 1 and a blue. But it has the same drawback. It enters tapped, it taps for 2 mana, but you bounce a land when it enters the battlefield. But it's pretty sweet. Azorius Chancery is sweet, and when it's basically a 2-for-1, it's just an expensive land. It kind of double taps because it sends you back a land, and you can use the other mana that turn, but you have to cast it at sorcery speed. And then, so you say cast your 1-drop on turn 2, or your 2-drop on turn 3, and then you play this and you bounce the tapped land that you used, and then next turn you'll have that land in your hand, and it's like 2 lands that you've drawn off this. So it's card advantage in a really roundabout weird way. I love them. Also, let's see, more spells. Sky Tether is sweet. Definitely an emphasis on flying creatures. I think we noticed well before here. But it enchants a creature. It gains Defender, which means it can't attack. It can only block. And it loses flying. So if it can't attack you, and it loses flying, that means it can't block your flyers, and it can't attack you. So it can just be a 1-mana removal spell, which is very powerful, but requires some deck building constrictions. Let's see. There's Azorius Keyroom. This is a mana rock, so it's an artifact, typically, that costs normally colorless mana, and taps to add mana to your mana pool, like blue or white. This one also has another ability. It adds, if you can tap blue and white and make a 2/2 white and blue bird artifact creature token when flying until the end of turn. Some crazy people played this in their Sphinx's Revelation deck. Some crazier people played Darksteel Ingot so that you could planar cleansing and not lose your locket or keyroom. Azorius Signet, that's where the real power is at for mana rocks. Once you make mana rocks cost 2, they start looking much more attractive. So this takes 1 mana and turns it into blue-white mana. It is a nightmare to activate this ability on Magic the Gathering Online. In real life, though, you just tap your mana and it all works out fine. But you take a mana and make a blue and white mana out of it. So if you're particularly mana restrictive, like if you're trying to cast a card like Sphinx's Reprov right on top, make sure you tap your lands and do this. It's horrifying on Magic Online. Luckily, they don't put the signets around, but they're really powerful. Going from 2 mana on turn 2 to 4 mana on turn 3, like getting this guy down, especially, make sure things cost more for them to answer it. It's very, very powerful. Getting ahead on mana is another way to, tempo your opponent out. Azorius Charm. Hey, I didn't even know this was in here. This is sweet. This was in the Sphinx's Revelation deck. I talked about 2 of the modes. It was draw a card and put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. This is by far the most common modes, especially in that deck. But you can also give creatures you control lifelink until end of turn. I have pumped up an Aetherling to 8 power, given it lifelink and attacked against mono red. Sometimes you had to do what you had to do. Sweet card. It's very powerful. I think this is the new incarnation of it, and making a 4/4 is certainly the more powerful than any of the modes on this one. So having the combat trick or the removal spell kind of, put it off for a turn spell, and then having it stapled to a more expensive but much more powerful ability like make a 4/4 flyer is awesome. I like the idea of this. Dramatic Rescue is a card I recognize. It was around, I think it was actually in Dragon's Maze, but it was around in the second Ravnica block. It returns a creature you own to your hand and you gain 2 life. You can't use it as a bounce spell to bounce your opponent's things, but it does save your creatures if they try and kill it. It's powerful, especially if you have instant speed creatures you can cast. Summary Judgment is sweet. I like effects like this. It deals 3 damage to tapped creature. which means you can use it in combat before your opponent deals damage. But if you go ahead and let them hit you, if it's larger, if it has 4 or 5 toughness, you can cast it with Addendum on your turn, on your main phase, after something's already attacked you, or after you've tapped it with an ability you control. And you can deal 5 to it. So it deals, it's like Sandblast instead of Johnny's Intervention? Something like that. A Dramatic Intervention? Something like that. Sphinx's Insight, another Addendum card. This is from the most recent set, Ravnica Allegiance. If you cast this spell during your main phase, they're all on instants, and if you cast them during your main phase, they do something else or something extra. This time, this is Inspiration, which is 3 and a blue, draw 2 cards from Mirage or something. But the Addendum, if you cast it, costs an extra white mana instead of a mana of any color, but if you cast it during your main phase, you can gain 2 life. So it's a slight upside. There's also Depose Deploy. Hey, the one I called. It makes Thopters. So we got extra Thopters. Maybe we can copy it or something. I don't know. We can pretend they're doves. You make 2. One side is tap a creature, draw a card. I'm a fan of the card Ice. I've put it in some Legacy decks. I've put it in some decks where it probably didn't belong. It's from Ice, from Fire Ice. It's mainly there for the fire, but it's way sweeter tapping like a Grizzlebrand or something, drawing a card, and then killing your opponent the next turn. It's very nice. Especially when they already paid 7 life, expecting to be able to gain it back. So it's just an ability to cycle this card as well, pay 2 mana, and get rid of a card and draw a card again as an instant, but it requires a creature to be around. But you can also make 2 1/1 flyers, and then gain 1 life for each creature control. So even on a blank board, you make 2 of these guys and gain 2 life. On a big board, where you're building out a bunch of flyers and make some doves, you probably just makes a lot of doves instead of making 2 doves and gaining life. But you make 2 Thopters and gain a bunch of life, and it can really swing a race dramatically. Let's see. So that's all the spells, and a few of the lands. But I think what I love most about these guild kits in general, and this one in particular, the Azorius Guild Kit has by far my favorite lands in the past long while, especially basic lands. Oh, they're so pretty. They're Elena Danner did both of them, and they kind of fit together. They're both, a picture of the Ecumenopolis of Ravnica, and they are gorgeous. Island and Plains. I love the watermarks. I love the watermarks in about all of these. I really like the Izzet ones myself as well. These arts are gorgeous. You should go and find Elena Danner's Twitter and search through it until you find the full arts of these. They're fantastic. I'm going to pocket these before anyone notices while this video is wrapping up. But I hope you all enjoyed. These are sweet decks. I encourage you to grab these guild kits, especially if you're looking for any of these cards. In particular, Sphinx's Revelation is in my modern deck right now. So is Detention Sphere. And I have played several of these cards in Legacy and Modern. I have played against Enduring Ideal in this very shop at Myrtle Beach Games. I lost almost all of the games, but they were very fun games, unlike all the other ones. Unlike every other game I've played, when you have a Dovescape on the battlefield, you just want to cast a bunch of spells, make some 1/1s, but they don't matter. This is fun. I would encourage you to shuffle it up, play it with your friends, play some sweet Karoo lands, some sweet visits across the Ravnica sets and older generations, and I know that we will have a bunch of these guild kits available at Myrtle Beach Games. You show up, play them against other guild kits, and read the fine print when you sign up for Azorius. Have a nice night.